Morning all, I'd like to show you a trap popularised by Bobby Fischer. It was created, or rather witnessed, in the 1958-59 New York USA Championship in 1958. Bobby Fischer was playing Samuel Reshevsky. Samuel Reshevsky was a famous child prodigy and later a leading American chess grandmaster, a strong contender for the World Chess Championship from the mid-1930s and mid-1960s. Okay, he was an 8 times winner of the US Chess Championship, and in 1958-59 he was playing Fischer with the black pieces. In their previous encounter in the US Championship the year before, it was a hard-fought draw in the Sicilian can variation. Fischer had set up a kind of Morocco bind. Was it going to be similar to the previous year's encounter? Fischer kicked off with e4. Samuel Reshevsky played the Sicilian defence again, and after knight f3 instead of e6 we saw actually Samuel Reshevsky playing knight c6. Now knight c6 can still lead into many different variations of the Sicilian, but what we see in this game is d4, open Sicilian, c takes, knight takes, and now black has options such as knight f6 to try and get maybe a Sicilian Tveshnikov. There are various options for black, but black goes for an accelerated fianchetto with g6. And by not forcing white to play knight c3, white does have the option of repeating what he played. Similarly, the encounter the year before, the Morocco bind, is possible here. But Fischer chose actually, instead of even c4 or knight c3, he chose actually the more unusual looking bishop e3. And this looks as though it wants to treat this accelerate fianchetto as if it's a normal Sicilian dragon in some respect. We see knight f6, knight c3, and maybe Samuel Reshevsky is looking forward to this. If this is going to be treated like a normal Sicilian dragon, black might even consider a quick d5 later, so bishop g7, but the quick d5 is ruled out. Fischer plays bishop c4, and now after castling, black is setting a kind of small virtual trap himself. If white continues as though this is standard Sicilian dragon with say f3, then there's a very powerful move in queen b6 which virtually equalizes, because there's a nasty tactic here. If the bishop actually drops back to protect b2, then black has knight takes e4, and this is known to be quite good for black. White is forced to avoid losing a pawn here. If he just takes, he's losing this knight on d4, he's just lost the pawn, so white is forced to play knight d5, which isn't ideal, and we get a situation like this which is about equal. But Fischer avoids this kind of trap. He doesn't play f3, and he plays a natural move, bishop b3, ahead of queen b6, and still without this pawn moving there's no knight g4, so there's no need for f3 anyway to protect usually against knight g4s to grab this bishop. Now black, seeing that this bishop's quite valuable on this diagonal, wants to get rid of it, and it seems a very natural move now that Samuel Reshevsky played. He played knight a5, and this is a very, very interesting issue which is exposed now with this move. What has it actually done? Well, for a moment it's taken away the a5 square from the black queen, and you might not think that's at all significant, but white has a very fine concept here available. White plays now e5, and it seems, you know, Samuel Reshevsky shouldn't mind this. As soon as the knight retreats, I know it's only got one decent square here, it doesn't really want to go to h5 because then there's g4, so it's only got one decent square, but black is looking forward to taking this bishop and then celebrating this bishop maybe later. So the knight goes back in the expectation that this bishop's going to be taken, but it turns out there's something very horrible in this position going on. I wonder if you can spot Fischer's next move if I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, bishop takes f7 check. And you might think, what is going on here? Well, the thing is, after, let's have a look. Rook takes f7. Can you see what white can play in this position? White has weakened a bit black's control over a certain square. That's my clue. So if I give you 10 seconds here, what can white play in this position? White can play knight e6, and there's a pin on that pawn of the queen, and the queen hasn't got a5, it hasn't got b6, hasn't got c7. White's virtually checkmated the queen here. This is a big advantage to white. If black has to give up the queen like this, there's nothing going on here. It's a miserable position, material down. So let's go back. After bishop takes f7, if the king moves, it doesn't help. We still play knight e6, still winning that queen. King takes, we've seen rook takes. If king takes, now here it gets even more beautiful. It looks as though the king is supporting actually e6 against knight e6. But knight e6 is played anyway. So it's forcing the king out. The king really wants to save the queen. Okay, let's have a look. If the king really wants to save the queen with king takes e6, is this trouble? Well, it is. Check, king f5, and now there's g4 check. So the king is not given any time, and these resources, these potential defensive resources, are not given a chance. White's attacking resources are drawn in. King takes, check. And if the king goes to h4, it's getting mated like this. Check, check, check. It's a false mate wherever the king goes. In fact, here, as you'd expect, it's a king versus a lot of attacking pieces. On king h5, the most accurate is queen g2, threatening queen h3, queen g4, queen g5. So whatever black does, there's going to be one mate available, like queen g5. So that's quickest. Queen g2 is the end of black. So a beautiful trap was set by Bobby Fischer. As it turned out in the game, Reshevsky didn't want to lose to young Fischer so quickly, and he played on with d takes e6 in their encounter, and there was quite a few moves after. So was black absolutely doomed here? Well, actually, if we go back in slow motion after knight a5, e5, black's best bet was actually to play knight takes b3. And this is nearly causing white some problems, actually. So white is getting two pieces for the rook. He's just lost his bishop. He's gaining his piece back here. Now he's losing his rook. And you might think, well, two pieces for the rook is generally good. So f takes g7. Now black's absolutely best move here is not to help white with knight takes c2 or king takes g7. Black's best is to try and establish a centre very quickly with rook e8 for d5 and e5, then push forward with d4. This is the very strongest move black has available. And it's so strong, if white routinely takes on a1 here, for example, then we see this strategy having effect, e5 and a quick d5, and it starts to be only a small, very small advantage for white. So beware, this needs careful consideration, this rook e8 move. If you have a position like this, then it starts to get quite difficult even for white to play. Only a tiny advantage for white. So you might think two pieces for the rook, but black's centre is quite imposing here. So let's go back. So it requires some accuracy to play against rook e8. The most accurate move is not to take the knight, but to play castle here. If black wants to take on c2, it ruins a bit his plan of e5 and d5, because, for example, queen takes c2, e5, white can actually, doesn't have to go back here with the knight. Actually, there's other very strong moves, like knight d5. The idea to try and celebrate the f6 square. So black's not getting the center here, and white's got this huge threat of knight f6 now. So black doesn't really want to take on c2 here. It helps white quite a lot. So let's imagine black plays e5. And again, some caution here in playing this trap. If, for example, knight b5 is played, then d5, and I'm afraid that this is a tricky position again, because black's actually, you're not even winning black's piece here. After knight takes d5, knight takes c2, that's the problem. This is about equal. This position starts to be a bit equal. So it's a trap which white has to play queen takes d5 here for this knight f6 check. It gets quite involved. So great care has to be taken here after rook e8 to make this trap, to get any advantage from it. But if white castles e5, there is a strong move here which can be played instead of knight b5, and it's to do with the f6 square. White has knight e4 to get a small advantage here. So the idea of bishop g5 is very strong here. If black takes bishop g5, and this is a big advantage, for example, we're just winning the rook, and that's big, very big. Off the check, huge advantage to white, still with knight f6 coming. So this knight e4 guarantees white in this position a small advantage here. So this trap, you need to be careful when playing it to understand that it can lead to some complications after e5 if black plays knight takes b3. As long as you understand that, there's still some work to do, but it's a great trap otherwise, exploiting the queen kind of virtually being checkmated here without too many squares. That natural knight a5 is blocking in the queen, and that's subtly exploited here with this trap bishop takes f7 check. So quite a neat idea. On rook takes f7, we see knight, the spectacular knight e6. So that's the key basis of the trap. Okay, with this win, Fischer won the US Championship again that year. So this was the second time he won the US Chess Championship, and it was a point difference again against poor Samuel Reshevsky. Fischer ended up with 8.5 out of 11, 6 wins, 5 draws, a point ahead of Samuel Reshevsky, his opponent here. Had 5 wins, 1 loss and 5 draws. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.